And his schedule reflects this confidence that there's going to be at least some thread that can be found after today's meeting that the U.S. can take to our allies, South Korea and Japan. Pompeo is departing for Seoul, South Korea tomorrow, and he heads to Beijing on Friday. Again, just sort of cementing this notion that this U.S.-North Korea diplomacy isn't operating in isolation. It's part of a bigger diplomatic process that involves our allies. And again, unlike Rex Tillerson before him, I think everyone believes here Mike Pompeo is willing to dedicate all of his energy to continuing whatever comes out of the Singapore process. Once again, you want to leave these talks in trusted hands, and I think Pompeo is giving off all the right signals.
Luke Vargas, thank you very, very much. The latest from Singapore there. And Luke is right. Others are confirming as well that they expect something to come of these talks, brief though they might be. We're going to be monitoring, of course, on Fox Business. 9 p.m. When the talks begin, will begin, and we'll be on throughout the night as long as it takes to get you the latest with concurrent foreign market reaction, particularly Chinese market reaction, Asian community market reaction, as that will extend overnight to futures trading and the rest. All together to put this in perspective.
A lot is at stake, including nuclear disarmament and potentially normalizing relations between the U.S. and North Korea. Ahead of the one-on-one meeting, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is outlining what the goals will be.
This is truly a mission of peace. The ultimate objective we seek from diplomacy with North Korea has not changed. The complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of the Korea Peninsula is the only outcome that the United States will accept. North Korea has previously confirmed to us its willingness to denuclearize, and we are eager to see if those words prove sincere.
Meanwhile, President Trump believes he'll be able to quickly predict the outcome of the high-stakes sit-down.
I think within the first minute, I'll know. Just my touch, my feel. That's what I do. How long will it take to figure out whether or not they're serious? I said maybe in the first minute. You know, the way they say that you know if you're going to like somebody in the first 5 seconds. You ever hear that one? Well, I think that very quickly I'll know whether or not something good is going to happen.
Let's bring in special report anchor Bret Baier. He's live in Singapore, and it's been 3 hours since we talked when you were on the daily briefing. What have you learned since then?
Well, I've learned that it's moving forward. I've also learned that Sean Hannity will have a sit-down interview with President Trump. That just was alerted to everyone. So that'll be interesting after this all comes to conclusion, that the president is leaving sometime today. We don't have a specific time frame as of yet, and that he will hold a news conference later on, according to the White House. You know, Dana, this is going to be at least 45 minutes with the two leaders and translators alone at the Capella Hotel, and that is a really interesting moment. And to President Trump's point, whether he can assess how far they can get down the road this time or set up a structure or a framework for next time, that's what is really going to be determined.
All right, Bret, we're going to take it around the table for a round of questions. We'll start with Jesse Waters.
Hey, Bret, I saw some video of Kim Jong-un making an entrance into a hotel area and just greeted with thunderous applause. So I don't know if you've gotten out of the hotel that much, but what's the local flavor on the streets there in Singapore? Are the expectations and view of Donald Trump and Kim different than they are here in America? And has Sebastian Gorka caused an international incident yet? A lot of people are very concerned.
Well, thank you, Jesse, for that last question. I have not seen anything about Sebastian Gorka in causing problems here, but I have seen a lot of this excitement, kind of fervor about this summit. Everything has a picture of Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. You're right that there is this iconic hotel here, the Maritime Sands Hotel, Resort and Casino, and Kim Jong-un went out last night and did tour the area, and he did get a lot of applause at one point as he walked in that hotel. There's kind of like this apprehension about what's happening. Nobody's going to get close to this summit, but there's kind of an excitement on the streets and impersonators out and about. It's a little surreal.
Brett, we'll go to Greg Gutfeld next.
All right, Brett, I thought I would begin with a golf metaphor because I know that you love to golf. And I think when you're watching the coverage in the media, I think the naive see this as trying to hit a hole-in-one, like at a Pee Wee golf course, so that they win a free game. But in reality, it's like a par 6. And you got to have like a whole bag of clubs, and you're going to be all over the place, and you need a few valuable caddies. Is that a fair summation?
Well, there aren't really par 6s, but let me go down that
yes,
road.
There are. I remember par 6.
I think
only you.
Yeah, but I think that I think you're right that the coverage of it is pretty simplistic as far as what is possible. What we know is that they're at this table. We know that previous administrations for decades have not been able to get to this table. We know that 3 hostages, 4 if you say Otto Warmbier, and obviously he passed away, were released. We know that they've had some success scaling back the missile testing and the nuclear testing, even though one of those facilities was collapsing apparently. But there are successes before you get to the table, and I think the coverage overall, a lot depends on what happens in the next 4 hours when they first meet.
Kimberly.
All right. Hello, Brett. Thanks for doing a great job over there. We're looking forward to the coverage. Just wanted to ask you some of the behind the scenes, maybe messaging from, the White House signaling reasonable, realistic expectations, in terms of the outcome of the meeting between these 2 world leaders.
Well, I think there's a lot of that, and there's a little bit of scaling back over the recent days. I do hear a lot more that this is the first of several meetings, likely going back to like the Reagan summits with Gorbachev. You had Geneva was first, and that led eventually to Reykjavik and Washington and Moscow. I think that this is a Geneva-type meeting that sets up others. The question is how far down the road they can go, and how far the North Koreans are really able to get to denuclearize to get economic benefits for their nation.
Juan Williams.
Brett, I'm very interested in what you said at the very top about the president leaving later today. Obviously, last week they were discussing the possibility of this being a 2 to 3 day summit. And I wonder what your reporting has found in terms of why the decision was made to leave earlier. And the follow-up to that, if you have a moment, I'll let you answer that and then ask the second question.
Yeah. Well, 2 things. One is the White House is clear to point out that that could change. It's not in stone, that if things are really cooking and there's more to talk about, that they could change the departure date. But 2 is that there was a departure date for Kim Jong-un, that he was set to leave sometime today. The president was going to leave that open-ended, but then I think said, I'm going to leave today. We're going to get what we can get. And 3, Secretary Pompeo was pretty specific that they had several meetings that they believed were going much more quickly than they thought they would.
So the second question, Brett, is about what the United States is willing to offer to Kim Jong-un in exchange for denuclearization. Mike Pompeo said earlier, it's not the case that we're talking about removing U.S. troops from South Korea. There are questions about human rights and whether or not we would stand up for people like Otto Warmbier as we seek denuclearization. Do you have any idea, based on your reporting there, about what the United States is offering North Korea?
We're trying to get specifics. We're talking to people all behind the scenes, but in public and on the record, Secretary Pompeo was pressed and wouldn't get into exactly what's going to happen. A lot is flexible. We're told that they're not going to talk about human rights, but I'm not told that that's in stone. We're told that they're not going to deal with U.S. troops anywhere in South Korea, but we don't know what we don't know in that private meeting between the 2 leaders. So you're going to look at that meeting, and I think a lot will come out of that, and hopefully we'll hear some more details. The end of the Korean War officially, while ministerial in its kind of layout, is a big deal here in the region, and that's probably going to be on the table.
All right, Brett, thanks for staying up, and I guess you're going to stay up for another 24 hours, and we appreciate it, and we'll see you tomorrow.
You got it.
All right, we'll take it around the table here. Jesse, you got a lot of notes here because this is a historic moment. Kind of fun to live through it.
No, these are just your notes that spilled over, Dana, because you have so much reading material. The only thing that strikes me, I just go back to this video of this guy, Kim Jong-un, getting this applause when he walks in, like he's this big celebrity, and he may actually escape from human rights sanctions. I mean, think about what he's done to people: forced abortions, extermination, labor camps, torture. Malnourishment of his own people, and then to kind of weasel out of this as this diplomatic guy that's kind of come into the modern age and then allowed U.S. investment potentially in North Korea, but not have to answer for some of the heinous and atrocious acts he's perpetrated on other people and his own people. It's a little scary to think that we would be able to cut a deal. I know you have to cut a deal with heinous people, but I think everybody needs to remember what he's done, and there has to be some accountability for the North Korean regime for decades of disgusting and inhuman abuses.
Yeah.
Can I respond? Sure. You kind of get to the reality of this, which is that on this planet, there are bad eggs. We know that. What do you do with bad eggs? If you're pro-human and you want more people to live, isn't this kind of the exact step? Before you turn out the lights, you decide you're going to turn out the lights, why don't you come over, sit down and talk, and show the bad egg what the world could be like if you decide to change? That's a salesman. So before America or the West decides to make some momentous, consequential decision that impacts 28 million people, I guess 25, 28 million people negatively, either through devastation or starvation, you exhaust the possibilities. And one of the possibilities is you show the off-ramp before the cliff. Because we know what the cliff is going to be. So here, Trump is that kind of guy that walks around and goes, look at this off-ramp. It's very appealing. This is what you could have. And that's the carrot that he dangles. And then the stick, which is what may end up being the case, but you got to show the carrot before the stick.
That's interesting you say that. I read that, you remember the vice chairman that came here to New York and delivered the letter to President Trump? He had never been to the West before, and apparently Secretary Pompeo was showing him the skyline of New York City. It's like, this is actually how the real world works if you want it.
Yeah, I think it's so true. You really need to be able to present that and paint a picture of how things can be and have that juxtaposition about, what they're facing in North Korea. When you really just think about it, why wouldn't you want to have economic prosperity and be able to have the things that we're so fortunate to enjoy in the United States and in Western civilizations, most certainly. I think the fact that they met someplace else is also very good, to go into sort of like a neutral ground, to go to Singapore. Then even in terms of the transportation that he arrived in and working out the finances behind that for Kim Jong-un, et cetera, you got to do what it takes to try to get them to come halfway and create a further, deeper understanding of what's at stake here. How can he know if he hasn't experienced it or seen it? And I think to meet, President Trump, I have to tell you, I think part of it is a little bit of his love of kind of American lifestyle and pop culture. Hence, he had that kind of fascination, with American themed movies like Dallas and that type of thing, and TV series, and Dennis Rodman. So here you have somebody kind of larger than life with President Trump, the TV shows, being someone who, had Celebrity Apprentice for years. I'm telling you, I bet you all of that has factored in to a little bit of his curiosity to be able to come and sit and meet with the man. Okay, great. Whatever it takes to bring him to the table and then actually accomplish great ends.
Juan, I'll give you the last word.
Well, I think that, what Kimberly is saying is the concern of a lot of people in our foreign service and our intelligence community, which is that we are giving him the meeting. We are giving him the photographs. We're not going to focus heavily on human rights that Jesse is concerned about. So we are giving up something even before we start talking about, are we giving up troops, the presence of our troops in South Korea? Are we going to offer tremendous economic aid? What are we offering here? And so when the president says, you get to know someone within the first minute, have you heard about the first 5 seconds and you can tell this or that, I think he's trusting in his gut. And I think all of us have to root for him and root for this gut thing. But yes, at the same time, I think he may be being set up, Dana, and, it's not great for everybody to have such high expectations because it's the first time the leader of North Korea and the U.S. are sitting down. Everybody thinks, oh, this is it. This is it. Well, I don't think this is it.
Tonight is the first night of the new episode of the season. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But you can't have diplomacy without photographs. I mean, if you can figure out a way to meet with somebody without being in a picture, it's just an inevitability.
We're going to have time to talk about this a little bit more. Meantime, President Trump and key allies talking tough on trade following a contentious G7 summit. What they're saying about it next.
Somewhere in the middle of the city, New Year's Eve, Times Square. If you gotta let me go, I'm gonna be alright. Just don't tell me goodbye. Here.
The feud that broke out after the G7 summit is escalating. President Trump is hitting back at Justin Trudeau after the Canadian Prime Minister held a press conference at the end of the summit, blasting the president's tariffs. Trump doubling down on fair trade on Twitter, calling it, quote, fool trade when America gets stuck with a losing deal. And the Trump administration is pulling no punches, slamming the Canadian leader for his criticism.
There's a special place in hell for any foreign leader that engages in bad faith diplomacy with President Donald J. Trump and then tries to stab him in the back on the way out the door.
He really kind of stabbed us in the back. He really actually, you know what? He did a great disservice to the whole G7. He betrayed...
Trudeau did.
Yes, he did.
Meanwhile, the media is piling on the president for his tough talk after the G7.
It's unprecedented. I mean, I don't remember in any of my coverage of these kinds of summits that ever this kind of language has been directed at America's closest ally.
It seems like the phrase leader of the free world might be obsolete based on what we saw.
And the name calling, I've never heard anything like that with a U.S. president calling a U.S. ally names.
This summit was a huge win for Vladimir Putin. He didn't even have to show up.
Oh, my gosh. Vladimir's like, wow, I don't even have to show up and I'm winning. This is interesting. Okay, Jesse. So what do you make? There was a little bit of, back and forth. Seems like things were going okay, and then all of a sudden it's switched and flipped in the other direction where there was this back and forth between Trudeau and the president.
Yeah, Trump campaigned on being tough on trade, and now he's delivering. I just don't think the media is used to politicians following through on what they say they're going to do during the campaign. Talk about alienating our allies in the media. I think Obama alienated the Israelis, the Saudis, the Ukrainians, the Iraqis. So don't all of a sudden lecture Donald Trump about offending allies. They've done enough of that over the course of the years. Dana, this reminds me of the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930.
Yes.
When a massive trade war broke out at the beginning of the Depression, and it wasn't going well for a long time because it extended the Depression, but everybody realized lowering tariffs on both sides of the Atlantic is good for business, and that's all the president wants to do. They have massive tariffs in the EU on cigarettes, for instance. 33% tariff on American smokes. I want American cigarettes in the lungs of Europeans. They love to smoke. Why shouldn't they smoke competitive priced American cigarettes? I don't get it, but it's also dairy, it's meat, it's ridiculous. So all he's saying is, we pay for NATO, we pay to protect you guys. Our spending on the military is very large compared to yours as a percent of GDP. So we have lower tariffs, we have higher military spending. That benefits you guys. Let's just create a fairer system. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, although Navarro's comment about hell might have been a little too much.
Was that a little over the top for
That was even over the top for me.
Now, Jesse, you want American smoke in the lungs of all Europeans, especially the French, but also e-cigarettes,
also sugar
vaping?
And dairy. I mean, a number of things I'd like over there.
So let me ask you, Jesse, what has he delivered? Zero. Zip. There's no deal. There's nothing.
It's one day since the G7 won.
No, well, I'm saying you said he delivered. He doesn't deliver.
He
said he's
delivered in
delivered
South
on
Korea.
what promise? I don't see any promise.
South Korea redid the deal, Juan.
In terms of trade, we're talking G7 now. That was the first segment. In terms of the G7, what did he deliver? Zero. And in fact, Jesse, again, fake news. This is the kind of thing that Trump puts in the atmosphere. And everybody says, oh, well, I guess I heard Trump say it. But in fact, here's what the World Bank says. The average current tariffs of the United States, Britain, Germany, and France are identical. In some cases, the Japanese lower. So what is a big difference? Trump likes to talk about the difference in trade. He's talking about goods. We do things like services. We do things like intellectual properties. We have a tremendous advantage. Trump doesn't discuss it. And then you get this photo. I don't know if you guys saw a viral photo of Trump seated, Angela Merkel staring over him, and you get Macron of France leaning in with Merkel, standing on this side, the Japanese president. People say, wow, this is unbelievable. This is like America, not against Justin Trudeau, but America against the world. And for what? What are we breaking down? Historic Western alliances that won World War II.
I love the photo.
Wait, we have to wait. No, because when you introduce something like that photo, you have to put it in the context that there were 4 photos. The next photo after that, they're all laughing.
Right.
And there are photos of this. When you can catch a photograph of the 5 and we'll be like this, ooh, and the next minute we're laughing. This is just an errant photograph. And by the way, you didn't laugh at it.
Who are you going to believe? Your lying eyes are.
You are lying because you're misrepresenting this. There were 4 photos, Juan. You picked
look
one.
At the picture. Audience, you decide. We report. You deserve. Look at the picture.
Juan, you're going to lose on that
No,
one.
You will, because you'll see the photos and you'll be embarrassed.
That picture is real or not real?
You will be so embarrassed.
That picture was made up.
No, stop while you're behind. All right, I want to make a point though. We tend to jump skip here. We skip the question. The question is, does anybody have a decent explanation for why we must accept high tariffs? The response is, ooh, we don't want to have a trade war. That's not the question. No one wants a trade war. What we're asking is, why can't we ask the question about this lack of balance in trade tariffs? If you have a 290% tariff on
that's not true.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
According to the World Bank.
You know, World Bank statistic is deceptive. We're talking about specific.
It's deceptive.
Because I'm talking about specific tariffs.
Canada has a 258% tariff on U.S. dairy.
Okay, you got to let me. You got to let me represent this.
But that one specific area is not
now it's true. Now you're admitting it. It's a 270% average in dairy. That is real. It is a problem in Canada because Canada's having a problem with Quebec. They're appeasing Quebec farmers over this. That doesn't help us. So Donald Trump, when he enters this world, everybody's attacking him because he's just asking the question, why is this good? That's all he's asking. And everybody goes, because we don't want a trade war. No. He goes, I don't want a trade war either, but I can ask.
Reciprocity.
Yes, there could be reciprocity. And nobody in cable TV answers the question. They just go, trade war. Or they find some stupid photograph. You know, come on.
That's one of like 30 taken.
My God.
Ms. Perino.
Well, I think that, like, in the media clip that we had before, we're like, this shock and awe, right, that they can't believe that this happened. But this is happening every week. So, like, I think if they are really concerned, then why don't you find the solution going forward? The president said something interesting at the summit that sort of got glossed over, and that was, what if we just have no tariffs at all between our countries, right? And people
that's the point.
Blow that off.
Yeah.
Now, yes, Canada has that tariff on our dairy. We have a huge tariff on softwood lumber coming from Canada. There's lots of reasons for that. None of them are necessarily good, but one of them is environmental because we manage our forests in a more, I would say, more environmentally friendly way than the Canadians do.
Yes.
So that's how all of these things get super complex and complicated. But the president's asking a very simple question, which is, why do we need any of this at all?
Yeah.
And I actually think that because it's in everyone's best interest for this to get solved, that cooler heads will prevail.
All right, perfect.
By the way, you know what would be a great experiment? Our problem is that we're mixing progressive income taxes with tariffs. Why not just have all tariffs?
Instead of income tax?
Yeah, just get rid of income taxes. That's how we had the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution came from tariffs.
Yeah. So we just attack our friends.
We
attack our friends in the G7. Meanwhile, we embrace people like Putin and Kim Jong-un.
Wow. You're my friend and I attack you every day.
No, but that's different. At least we do business.
Camera 4.
Is Putin doing business?
They're not our friends if they're ripping us off. Robert De Niro goes on another anti-Trump tirade, this time at the Tony Awards. The outrageous video next.
Last night, an elderly, confused man went missing in New York. Luckily, a band of self-satisfied elitists found him babbling on the street, threw some pants on him, gave him a stage.
Oh, my God.
I'm going to say one thing. Trump. It's no longer down with Trump. It's Trump.
to me. Talk about persuasive. Really, I was on the fence about Trump, but then I decided to really listen to one of the great generational leaders of American pop culture. And the clenched fists at the end, that really drove it home. It looked like he was pressing a 2-pound weight in a Jenny Craig commercial.
Oh, my God.
Look at it again. It's so cute. It's like he found out the restaurant serves Jell-O, or that he won a $10 scratch-off, or he scored a cameo in Jersey Shore, or he had his first #2 in a week. Thank you, Fibercon. What a sad end for a great actor. He went from Raging Bull, to this.
Look at this guy! Am I on drugs? Of course I am! But this is still incredible! Flex-Off history is being made!
What's up now, bro? Yeah, what's up now, bro?
Oh, yeah. Poor Bob. You know, he's like a star whose girlfriend dumps him for a bigger star who's in the White House while you're in Dirty Grandpa. Oh, man. So now the resistance is reduced to applauding tantrums. Who knew De Niro's lasting role would be irrelevant gas bag pleasing irrelevant peers? And he's doing this as Trump organizes a summit. Not a war, a summit. And you got to wonder, if it were President Hillary, Bob's choice, would you actually have a summit, or would you have a war? But forget deeds. What matters is adulation received from an emotional display before a packed sea of millionaire lemmings. So who cares that Trump meets with North Korea? It's no meet the parents. Right, Travis?
You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me?
Sit down. Nobody's talking to you anymore. Pathetic old man. All right. He was in, before I get to you, let's go to, I think he was in Canada, Toronto, opening a restaurant or doing something. And this is what he had to say.
And I just want to make a note of apology for the idiotic behavior of my president. It's a disgrace. And I apologize to Justin Trudeau, and the other people at the G7. It's disgusting.
You know, I actually feel bad for him, because I think he's one of those people that has never been emotionally recovered from 2016. This is a guy who's got serious Trump disorder.
Well, and where he was last night and where he was today, he certainly knows his audience, right?
Yeah,
so he's like talented in that way. But what he doesn't know are the cast and crew that work on his own show. So he was actually there as part of the musical that he co-directed is The Bronx Tale.
Right.
His name is on the marquee. He gets paid from it. They played the music leading up to it. He never mentions the show. And this is a show, like in the times that there's so much competition, and the cast and crew of A Bronx Tale really deserved a lot better. I think this was extremely selfish, because he didn't. You need publicity, right? And this was their shot to be able to get a chance to talk about that show, which I've seen and I loved it. And I think it was extremely selfish that he forego the opportunity. Forwent the opportunity? How do you say that? Forego the opportunity to talk about these people who need others to come to the show. So we'll do it here. Go see A Bronx Tale, even if Robert De Niro doesn't care.
Yeah. So he cheated the Tony honorees, but also I think he might have helped Trump get reelected, Jesse.
Yeah, I think Hollywood's not doing the Democrats a very good service here. If you think about it, he's like the Nancy Pelosi of Hollywood. Yep. Every time he opens up his mouth, the Republican Party goes like this, keep talking. And when you add this to Samantha Bee Seward, to Snoop Dogg, to Kathy Griffin, they are not doing a very good job helping Democrats get elected. And what this does is when something like this happens, it fires up the Republican Party, it turns off independents, and then it just drags the Democrats so far to the left that they cheer and they think this is acceptable. I would say, though, you have a choice. If you're a lefty person in this country and a celebrity, you're either going to resist Trump like this guy, or you're going to work with Trump. And we've seen celebrities work with Trump recently and get things done. I don't see why these people don't just show up at the Oval Office. Trump will bring them in, they'll get things done, and everybody will say it's a win-win. I mean, that's the easiest thing to do with this president. They're just not taking that avenue.
You know what it is? The metaphor is he can't get, it's like when you're in a relationship in which you're dumped, they're still dumped. They haven't moved on. In order to do what you're talking about, you've got to move on. And there are a lot of people in Hollywood who have moved on. He hasn't moved on. Kimberly, I also have a theory that De Niro and Trump are the same age. So the comparison is stark that De Niro's career is on the downslide. The movies, the choices he has to make are purely for financial reasons, whereas Trump is the leader of the free world. I think that's eating him alive inside.
Totally.
De Niro's broke, is that what you're saying?
Pretty much. Why is he doing Dirty Grandpa? It ain't for art.
He also has The Irishman that's coming out with Scorsese. That's going to make a pretty penny.
Yeah, but you know what?
Well, he just hurt the pretty penny for everybody else involved in that movie because he's not winning, hearts and minds behaving that way. It's just, it was poor theatrics at best. I agree with you, Dana. I think it was it was just like egotistical. Like, why take the moment away of triumph and of adulation for other people who've worked very hard and make it about yourself? It's just very myopic in terms of his viewpoint. And it's just like cheap thrills that he's kind of getting for himself. It just sort of suggests that psychologically he's not feeling so great about where he is or what he's doing, in life, and then he has to go. We don't need him to apologize to the Canadians or on behalf of Trudeau. It's like so bizarre.
Yeah, thanks,
no one casts you in that role, so I don't know. Maybe the next role he should play is somebody just, super jealous and underachieving and on the downslide, because it just doesn't seem like he's really holding it together well. And I really liked him in, Meet the Parents and the Fockers.
Watch your mouth, Kimberly.
It's over for me now.
So Juan, I get the impression now all you have to do is swear. You don't need to have any kind of intellectual argument.
Right.
Just swear. It works. It actually works.
When I hear you talk about Robert De Niro in this way, I think, oh, well, there must be some like B or C-list actor they're talking about. They're talking about Robert De Niro, who is one of the greatest American actors of all time.
Without question.
Yes, but
and
not
I don't
there.
think Robert De Niro is in any trouble. I think, in fact, Robert De Niro is standing up there. He's the raging bull in a rage over the outrageous behavior of this president. And it's not that he can't get over 16, Greg. It's that he can't get over the current contemporary reality of things like separating children from their parents.
You didn't do that.
Oh, that's not the president's administration. I see. And let me just say,
Obama.
he can't get over the idea, and I think this is what you're seeing reflected, that this president creates chaos, antagonizes
mental
our
illness.
allies, embraces Putin, has an ongoing investigation, which he says he's going to pardon himself. People are like, what the? So when you see Robert De Niro, who's a truly distinguished actor and a great American, do that, maybe the reason that people stand up and applaud is because they agree with us.
Or they have to.
You think this is helpful?
Oh, they have to?
You think this is helpful?
They have to.
Oh, they're
It's their industry.
Oh, I see. They're
on camera.
This is North Korea.
What about, imagine if you didn't sit. Imagine if you were sitting down, how much grief you would have gotten.
He's like,
No,
it's
what
like the
grief?
clap track.
You can
They
sit
gotta
on your
clap for him.
hands. I think in the conservative echo chamber, oh, now there you got to stand
the
up and obey the rules.
Maybe
I was
De
waiting
Niro
for
needs
that.
somebody to write some new lines for him.
Well, I think he did pretty well, because I think that if you
You have
look
a
at the
low
video,
standard if that's a good line.
Pow, pow,
All right.
applause.
President Trump and Kim Jong-un meeting face-to-face in just a few hours. The very latest on the nuclear summit straight ahead.
This is the Fox News Alert. The historic summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un taking place in just over 3 hours from now. The president tweeting minutes ago, meetings between staffs and representatives are going well and quickly. But in the end, that doesn't matter. We'll all know soon whether or not a real deal, unlike those of the past, can happen. Kimberly, what's your measure of success?
I think the fact that not to keep the bar too low, but I mean the fact that we're having this meeting to me is historic. The word's been used and bandied about a lot, but I think with good reason, because it's applicable. This is something that for the first time we're really able to get someone who has just been in a regime intractable and such a problem geopolitically to the table to have a meaningful discussion about denuclearization. This is going to benefit the world internationally. So I'm optimistic about it. I think the fact that they're sitting down is going to be the beginning of a relationship like we have seen with President Trump with other world leaders, and then furthering that along. If you sit down and you get to know somebody face to face versus over the phone or across email, it's much more meaningful and impactful in terms of getting to know them and then being able to build on that relationship and that sense of trust.
All right, Jesse, what we heard from Bret Baier earlier was that the president's representatives, his aides, have been scaling back expectations over the last few days and that he might leave early. What's your bar in terms of success here?
Well, like Kimberly said, it's the start of a long process. And I think the goal is complete denuclearization in return for massive amounts of American investment. So if we have McDonald's in there, if we have American companies in there, and they take their nukes off the table, that solves the security situation as well, because we're not going to bomb North Korea while we have McDonald's and American workers there. It just that's pretty simple. But I hate listening to the naysayers, because it's boring, and it reminds me of a Chinese proverb.
Oh.
Those who say it cannot be done should not interrupt those doing it.
Ah.
So when Obama botched the status of forces agreement, he botches the Iran deal, he botches the Syrian chemical weapons deal with Putin, and then they criticize this president for a meeting, it just kind of rings hollow.
Dana, what's your measure?
Way to tie that
I'm very comfortable if this is a slow walk.
Yes.
And if they just establish a rapport and decide to meet again, if that is the only deliverable, I'd be very comfortable with that. I think this deal has to be much better than the Iran deal by the president's own measure, but for the safety of the world.
Greg.
A couple of things. One, Brett owes me an apology. There are Part 6s even in Singapore. They're all over the country. I'm hurt. Number two, I don't want North Korea to denuke because I can't say the word. I've been trying to say denuclearization.
You did well.
You just
Ooh,
did
I just
it.
did
Wow.
it. I got over it. The other thing, too, is I think the media might want to mentally prepare for an achievement. Take some meditation classes, get a relaxation app on your phone. Take the month of August off.
So if it's the end of the war, you say, if the end of the Korean War, you'd say, oh, that's an accomplishment?
I think that's an accomplishment. Yeah, it's a step in the right direction.
Well, I'm nervous about that.
You are? Why?
Well, because I think it takes our leverage off the table, and also it starts a cascade of lots of other things technically and legally that we have to comply with, even though we might not want to.
Well, we know that the president likes to claim victory. Bill Maher, rooting for a recession? Come on. The comedian's controversial comments on why he hopes Trump's economy tanks. That's next.
Tanks for nothing.
Liberal comedian Bill Maher is getting backlash for these outrageous comments about the economy.
I feel like the bottom has to fall out at some point. And by the way, I'm hoping for it because I think one way you get rid of Trump is a crashing economy. Yeah. So please bring on the recession. Yeah. Sorry if that hurts people, but it's either root for a recession or you lose your democracy.
Kimberly, I think he has to be kidding because no one could be that stupid.
Yeah, and he's also not that funny, right?
And wasn't funny.
I mean, I don't know what he's doing. Can you imagine? As soon as I heard the word like recession and what he's saying, like, there's plenty of people who care about putting food on the table and having money in their wallets and being able to provide for their children. What are you talking about, recession? Like, here we are in the middle of a booming economy that people are really enjoying. Poll numbers very favorable. So you'd rather like sabotage millions and millions of people and like ruin their life because you personally are offended by a president who's winning? I mean, talk about mean-spirited. He should be in a support group with like Robert De Niro.
He's like, hold my beer, watch this.
Yeah.
That was pretty bad, Juan.
Yeah, I didn't like it. And, you know, to me, I don't like Trump, but I'm rooting for America and I'm rooting for the American economy. And what it suggested to me, though, is that he thinks that because of the economy, there are lots of people on the left who are being lulled into sorts of complacency, or it doesn't matter. So what? This is a lot like what Greg often says. Oh, well, this is looking good. So if it's looking good, why bother? Just leave. But of course, Trump is the great disruptor, and I understand his frustration, but I think he needs to reconsider that approach.
This is the ultimate ends justify the means.
Well, for Americans to want to vote for Democrats on economic issues, then the Democrats have to put forward an economic policy program that we have not seen yet. And the only thing they're doing right now is running against Trump for the midterms. So after that, I don't know where they go.
Yeah. Who knows? What do you think?
I have to say that I completely respect him for what he said because he's honest. He could be like another typical left-winger and say, you know, I'm happy for America, even though I don't like Trump. But he actually is an honest left-winger. He said, I wish the economy would tank and people will suffer because I hate Trump so much. I'm willing to see the country screwed. That's honesty. I respect the honesty.
That's why he knows 2020 the president win re-election because of the economy and good numbers.
All right, one more thing is up next.
One more thing.
It's time now for one more thing. Kimberly.
Okay, I was just saying I cried tears of joy all day yesterday. I was one of those moms, you know. Anyway, so Ronan has been playing in an NFL-sponsored flag football team, U1 Sports, partnered up with the NFL, which is really amazing for youth sports up in the Bronx. And each season they have a co-ed division. There was girls playing as well for grades 1st through 8th. And I'm going to take a look at this. So that's Ronan. He had an epic playoff and epic championship. That's him running in for a touchdown. Before that, you saw Coach Anthony with him, Coach Pena. Amazing kids that are playing in this league. This is me being a psycho, where I tried to videotape his winning touchdown with 16 seconds left on the clock, and it completely went insane. Wait, take a quick look.
Oh, tipped.
So then there he catches the tip. That's his friend Harrison going nuts. That's me running on the field going crazy. The ref escorted me.
Get off the field.
Off the field. And Ronan was like, I told you not to do anything to embarrass me. I was like, yep,
congrats, Ronan.
Yes,
all right,
good stuff.
So it's wedding season, as you well know, and the Royals kicked it off this year, Harry and Meghan in Britain. Take a look at some of their guests wearing the royal fashion accessory, the Fascinator. I had no idea about fascinators, but this weekend I got a close-up of the trendy headpieces when I saw photos of the ladies in my family. They wore them to my niece's bridal shower on Saturday in D.C. Fashion apparently travels fast across the pond. Good luck to Marisa and Nick.
Now, this is so gorgeous. I love fascinators. Harris,
it's fascinating.
Fascinating. Okay. Oh, my God.
So there's a lot of news out there, and, you know, I like to get the news clips in the morning. The most important news today, as Aaron Landers put on my thing, was that Dierks Bentley was on the cover of USA Today Life for his new album, The